back in episode 13, I introduced or maybe reintroduced, depending on your perspective, the idea of something called identity value. That is the degree to which the value of your solution of working with your organization taps into a stakeholder's perceptions, not of their company and its productivity, of their work and how good they are at it, but rather it taps into their own perceptions of self and how they think about themselves relative to their work, to their world, really, and to the degree to which working with you as an organization can help them feel better about themselves, can give them better credibility, maybe can give them opportunities for advancement or recognition from colleagues to just make them feel better, more positive about themselves, and that association with you is part of what makes that magic work. And I talked just very briefly about why this matters and what it might look like. So I thought I'd dig in maybe just a little bit more detail because there's some really fascinating data behind this. A lot of this work on identity value for us originally came out of a very straightforward hypothesis, which in fact was borne out to be correct, at least in terms of the data. And that hypothesis was simply based on a lot of practical experience, which is what happens in a B2B world when you engage a stakeholder with your solution and you get them all excited and they look at it and they see the value, they see the potential possibilities, they see its relevance for what they're doing in their particular job, and they get really excited and they look you in the eye and say, yes, this is exactly what we need, it's what we want. You know, if it were just about me, I'd be willing to buy this right now. And that feels so great in the world of sales, or for that matter, in the world of marketing, right? I've got a stakeholder who's looked me in the eye and says, yes, I want that. I want you. I want to work with you. This is amazing. And you're thinking, cha and ching, or whatever you think. You're thinking, this seems to be going really, really well. And so you walk away from that conversation thinking, this is a particular opportunity that's on track. This is a stakeholder that's on board. This deal is going in a good direction. And you feel very positive about that particular opportunity. But this is where things actually can wind up becoming problematic, because that very positive signal from that individual stakeholder may turn out, in fact, to be what one might consider to be a false positive. Because while it's absolutely true that in B2B we need to build these human connections, in fact, some CEOs in the past have said, it's not really B2B or business to business, it's B2P or business to people, because at the end of the day, it's not companies that buy things, it's people that do. But I've said many, many times that the challenge in B2B is not so much that it's not companies that buy things, but people that do. It's the fact that it's people that buy things, but it's not people that buy things, but groups of them that do. So that one stakeholder who has looked you in the eye and said, I'm willing to buy, now has to go inside their organization and line up consensus across a wide range and a large number of other stakeholders who ultimately need to be equally bought in and equally excited to move forward. And that's where things get really, really tough, because that was in fact the original hypothesis that we tested, that someone who looks you in the eye and says, I'm willing to buy, may in fact not necessarily simultaneously be willing to what I called fight. So it's like, if it were just up to me, I'd buy that solution right now. But in fact, you want me to go down the hall and talk to the CFO or the head of IT or get the legal team involved. I'm not willing to do that. I love you, but that ain't worth it. Those two things, in fact, are different. And in fact, that's actually what we found in large surveys of customer stakeholders, was a high degree of willingness to buy. Or put it this way, even for those who reported a high degree of willingness to buy, less than half of them were in fact willing to fight. And some people didn't like that fight language. They felt it was too martial or maybe too militaristic. But nonetheless, you get the idea that they weren't willing to go expend the political capital, the individual credibility, simply the emotional effort, the time it takes to go try to herd the cats across the organization. And I think that's what we always have to understand, is that in fact there is a difference between willing to buy and willing to fight, or maybe willing to buy and willing to build consensus, if you like that language better. And that's where identity value becomes so critical, because that's actually what identity value does, is it increases an individual stakeholder's willingness to go have those conversations. So I might have you, I might be willing to buy, but if you want me to feel motivated to expend the time, the effort, the emotional energy, the political capital, the individual credibility to go have the conversation with colleagues to try to win them over too, there's got to be something in it for me. And it can't just be it makes my company more productive, and it can't just mean that I'm more efficient in my job. It turns out, we found in our data, is that what really needs to happen is that I need to feel some sort of emotional connection. A lot of this, I think, actually happens at sort of the subconscious level. It's not that I'm always doing this conscious math of, hey, this is going to help me advance in my career. Sometimes it's almost more instinctive. Now, that's a hypothesis itself. It still needs some testing, but I think that's probably what's more often than not going on. But one way or another, we need a solution. We need a value proposition that speaks to someone and how they perceive themselves, and how working with us can change that perception, bolster that perception, so that they are motivated to go have those tough conversations. And if you want to see what this looks like in action, because I realize this sounds very, very abstract, a number of companies latched onto this idea, a few even before they saw our research, and did some amazing campaigns around it. And one of the best I've ever seen is something we profiled at CB back when we first found these ideas. It's from a company called Grainger, and some of you, at least in North America, will know Grainger well. This is a company in the maintenance, repair, and operations, or MRO space. So they help facilities with all of the different equipment and materials they need to keep up and running. And Grainger, and many of you will know this, particularly those who listen to sports radio in the United States, for many years had a campaign called "For the Ones Who Get It Done." And I'll link a video in the comments, but there's a particular video that you can still find on YouTube called "A Downtime is a Downer." And this is one of the first forays into this identity value campaign that they ran. I don't know that they thought of it as identity value as a campaign at the time, but that's really what it was. And the hero of the "Downtime is a Downer" campaign, in fact, for the entire campaign, is the plant manager, because that's who Grainger ultimately sells to, is the plant manager, the individual who runs the manufacturing plant, who's got to keep the machines up and running, keeps the everything on time, keep the product going out the door, and make sure that there is no downtime. And that person is the unsung hero of a manufacturing plant. That individual is the person that maybe doesn't get all the respect that he or she deserves from the front office and from the bean counters, as he calls them in the video, but he is in fact the hero. And Grainger looks him or her in the eye figuratively in the video and says, you are the hero. You are the one who gets it done, and we are here to be with you. We are here for the ones who get it done. And when that individual, not all individuals, but that individual for whom this particular ad is specifically tuned, when that person hears that video or hears that message, hears that campaign, you know what their visceral emotional reaction is? Wow, those guys, they get me. They totally get me. And that's why I need Grainger, because Grainger gets me, and together we're going to go make this happen. And not that I want to turn this into an ad for Grainger per se, but it's a really powerful example of what this very strong emotional connection looks like, because in fact, this individual, the plant manager in the video, he talks about the CFO's office. He calls them the bean counters. He says, there's the bean counters. I wonder where the beans went. It's like the last thing he wants to do is go upstairs and have a conversation with the CFO in the office of the plant. But now he will, because he's not alone. He's with Grainger, and Grainger helps him because he's the one who gets things done. That's what identity value looks like at play. And when you think about how does this look like, what does this look like in a B2B setting? You know, one head of sales or marketing I talked to once said, I sell industrial roofing materials. How does this apply to me? Because those industrial roofing materials sit on top of a building where human beings and safety and lives matter, and matter deeply. One way or another, whatever you sell in B2B, you can make this kind of human connection to more affirmation, to more credibility, to more success, to more recognition, and help those stakeholders feel like there's something in it for them to go have that fight or go engage in that emotional battle of getting others on board across their organization. And that's powerful, and that's identity value.